In 1961, a psychologist at Yale University ran an experiment. He wanted to know one thing: how far would an ordinary person go if someone in authority told them to hurt another human being? The answer destroyed everything we thought we knew about ourselves. The experiment was simple. A volunteer sat in front of a machine, a panel of switches, each one labeled with a voltage level, starting at 15 volts, going all the way up to 450. The highest switches were labeled danger, severe shock. The last two were simply marked XXX. In another room, separated by a wall, sat another person, the learner. The volunteer was told, "This is a memory test. Every time the learner gives a wrong answer, you press a switch. Each wrong answer, the voltage goes up." The volunteer could hear the learner. They could not see them. What the volunteer didn't know, what no one told them, is that the learner was an actor. There were no real electric shocks. The screams they would hear were recorded. The experiment began. The learner got answers wrong. The volunteer pressed switches. At 75 volts, the learner grunted. At 120 volts, they shouted that the shocks were becoming painful. At 150 volts, they demanded to be released. They said they had a heart condition. At 270 volts, they screamed in agony. At 300 volts, they refused to answer any more questions and begged to be let out. After 330 volts, silence. Every time the volunteer hesitated, the man in the white coat beside them said 4 things. Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue. You have no other choice. You must go on. Before the experiment, Stanley Milgram asked psychiatrists, students, and ordinary people the same question: how many participants do you think will go all the way to 450 volts? Every group said the same thing: 1%. Maybe 2. The sadists, the monsters, the truly broken people. Normal people would stop. 65% went all the way to 450 volts. 2 out of every 3 ordinary people, teachers, salesmen, workers, parents, administered what they believed was a potentially lethal electric shock to a stranger because someone in a white coat told them to. They weren't monsters. Most of them were visibly distressed. They sweated. They trembled. Some cried. Some laughed nervously and couldn't stop. But they kept pressing the switches. Milgram ran the experiment over and over. He changed the variables. When the learner was in the same room as the volunteer, visible, not just audible, obedience dropped. When the volunteer had to physically hold the learner's hand onto a shock plate, obedience dropped further, but it never dropped to 0. Even when they could feel the other person resisting beneath their hand, some people still administered the shocks. When the authority figure left the room and gave instructions by phone, obedience fell. When 2 authority figures disagreed with each other in front of the volunteer, obedience collapsed almost entirely. People don't obey orders blindly. They obey authority, remove the authority, or fracture it, and the obedience disappears. Milgram had begun this research for a reason. The Nuremberg trials had just ended. The world had watched Nazi officers explain, calmly, that they were only following orders. The question that haunted everyone was, how? How did ordinary German men, postmen, teachers, shopkeepers participate in industrialized mass murder? Were they uniquely evil? Was there something wrong with them specifically? Milgram wanted to find out. What he found was worse than anyone expected. There was nothing uniquely wrong with them. 2/3 of ordinary Americans behave the same way when placed in the same situation. The capacity to commit atrocities is not rare. It is not confined to one nation, one era, one type of person. It is built into how we respond to authority. The American Psychological Association suspended Milgram's membership. The experiment was condemned as unethical. The participants had not truly consented to what they experienced. Many reported psychological distress for years afterward, not from the shocks they gave, because there were none, but from the knowledge of what they had been willing to do. The experiment has been replicated dozens of times since then. In different countries, different cultures, different decades, the results remain roughly the same. Think about the systems you operate inside, your workplace, your institutions, the structures that tell you what is acceptable, what is required, what is expected. You have been trained, your entire life, to obey authority. The question Milgram really asked is not, would you hurt someone if ordered to? The question is, under what conditions would you stop? Most people never find out. They never push back. They never test the limit. They assume they would resist because they think they are different from the people in that room. They are not. 65%, 2 out of 3, in a controlled laboratory, with a stranger, under pressure from one man in a white coat. That is not them. That is us.